Hi guys, welcome to another Catshed catch up. I'm here with a long-term friend of mine, former player who I was fortunate enough to coach a very successful time for a club that we were both at. So Sam Portland, rugby player, a athletics coach, worked with professional athletes from many different sports. I certainly know of rugby 15s, rugby 7s, NFL player, some athletes from athletics. You've climbed Mount Everest. We'll probably go into that in
base camp.
To the base camp. Apologies.
Yeah.
Got to base camp. You've rebuilt a boathouse to live in.
Yeah.
Just, I've followed you since being your coach, and then getting to know you and becoming sort of one of those people that I like to keep in contact with. What's your story? Where have you come from? What have you done? Put all those bits together.
No, Will. No, it's good. It's good to have the conversation with you, mate. And so basically, a young aspiring rugby player, wanted to become a professional rugby player, as we all did. Realised that wasn't going to happen. Funnily enough, broke my leg playing quite badly when I was 19. Had a really nasty rehab for that. Ended up actually rehabbing myself. And then that kind of led me down this whole, journey of performance training and athletic development. And, working, when I first started, I didn't really know that my industry existed. I just thought you could be a physiotherapist and that was it. I didn't know that strength and conditioning and physical preparation was a whole industry in itself. And so then I had to go back to university after a couple of years where I landscape gardened for a few years, trying to get things there, figure things out after 15 months out with a broken leg. And then, did my undergrad degree. Then after my undergrad degree, I got an internship at Wasps. And then within 18 months, I was working within the first team there. Had some great experience coaching and working with those guys and the players there. Then throughout this whole period, I was always sort of coaching and working for myself alongside, playing. Obviously, I had you as a coach, playing over the national leagues and stuff. And then I had my second professional coaching job. Obviously, Piers O'Connor, a previous student of your school, I worked with him at Wasps, and then he signed at the club at Ealing, where I was working with him there before he moved on to Bristol, and I parted ways with Ealing. And then since then, the last couple of years, I've been just decided to go out on my own. So I do a lot of coach education. 5 years ago, we set up an academy which works with kids from 9 upwards, and that's been really, really good and an awesome project, because the 9-year-olds helped me coach my senior guys. They teach me a lot about coaching my senior guys. And so now I just operate as a performance consultant. I did Kenya Sevens on the 7 series, which was awesome. I've got some clients, one guy's in the NFL, I've got GB bobsleigh, I had professional fighters. I've got a whole view, spent some time in track and field. And it's just really nice to be able to be in this position now, I guess, where I can talk about a lot of things that I've done. And I'm a big believer that, you don't introduce yourself by telling people what you do, you tell people who you are. And, we touched on the side that I renovated a houseboat to live in over a summer. I climbed, did Mount Everest Base Camp for charity. I just I guess if I was to, who I am now is someone that likes to give back, have engaging conversations and create meaningful relationships, really. There you go. That's the Cliff Notes.
Powerful stuff. But so we spent a few, or probably more than a few minutes before I pressed record, just discussing things. And certainly, I've already made some points that I'm going to go away and research more. And that's something I've always got from you is little tidbits And something I'd probably like to do more often is actually touch base with you for these types of conversations. Looking at from a school point of view, like I said to you, the reason I'm touching out to you is to talk about things that my pupils can be doing currently in preparation for their future sport at all levels. You know, some will aspire to be professional players, some will just aspire to probably stay healthy and active. What kind of practical advice would you give them short term? We're in lockdown. What types of things would you recommend that they do to maintain or increase their fitness? And then medium to long term, you know, a year and beyond, what types of pieces of advice would you give them?
Well, first and foremost, I spoke to a really successful coach not that long ago, and he said to me, and this from a coaching point of view, but then also I think this can be applied to an athlete's sporting career, is that wherever you are, that's where the big time exists. If you don't make the big time where you are, you'll never see the big time, quote unquote. You'll never get to that point. So treating every environment that it is the big time. And I remember like playing with, like, you remember some of the games that we had at Tilton. I remember when we won down at Weston-super-Mare and there was like 10 people on the sideline. It felt like there was 100,000 people in the ground. And because it's what you're creating. And so whatever if you end up in front of 100,000 people or 10 people, the big time is there. And in terms of what the kids can be doing, is not losing sight of that. And I think that's important for parents as well to understand that's it. It's all a process. But what they can be doing to help themselves now is just, you know, working on the basics, working on, you know, being able to do push-ups, being able to do chin-ups, understanding the weight and the importance of that. Working on their fundamental basic skills. And that's going to be huge. And what we can do is actually what we've done in the academy is we do actually do some follow along sessions on Zoom twice a week. And we'll give you the link and we'll invite all your students to it. And we don't charge for it at the moment. So we can get them on and they can see exactly what we do. I'm more than happy to do that. Because it's important. And like we say, like everyone's world's changed massively, and I think it's important that we acknowledge that, you know, the pressure on these young kids has changed. They're not in school, but then now they're still expected to behave like they're in school. They're not doing, their parents aren't at work, and yet they're still meant to behave like they're at work. And everyone's still fighting over the toilet, and that's the fundamental thing, really. And so in terms of their development, it's all about, we like to, with the way that we communicate, because they come and see us outside of the school hours, is that we treat them and talk to them like adults until they stop acting like them. And we give them the opportunity to fail safely and fail regularly, and honor their responsibilities when they're within it. We keep them engaged by giving them targets. We've basically created a game on how we can progress the athletes through our curriculum. Everything's got an entry and exit requirement. So then, and everything's a level. We basically got a 10-stage level game that we play with the guys, and that 10 levels can take up to 5 to almost up to 8 years to complete. So we give them and bring them into this whole long-term process where they're constantly measuring, adjusting, adapting. And we talk about this in the ebook that we just put out, is that we actually get new kids to come in and teach other kids the game. And within that, they've got autonomy and their control because they understand it. And if we can impart that to them now, like I say, is if your focus, and we take this concept of a level progression, your focus shouldn't be how am I going to get back to what I did before. It's how am I going to get to where I need to be and keep moving forward in that way. Especially with young rugby players, if you're a young rugby player listening to this and you can't do 10 chin-ups and you can't do 10 push-ups, then you're at risk of, but you, when you're being taught to tackle someone, you just haven't got the strength there. And one of the big myths that we have with when talk to parents is that, you know, lifting weights makes you stunt your growth, which it couldn't be far from the truth, because it actually improves bone density. So volume training improves bone density, and actually some intensity improves bone health and growth. So we can actually help you become more robust to the training by not really doing a lot. And in terms of intensity, what they're getting, if we take sprinting as fast as you can, as you've ever done in your life, is the most intensive thing that you can ever do. And if you scale back and your kid is like, is doing 10 push-ups or 5 push-ups or 3 sets of 3 perfect push-ups, that's just a lot of effort to them. It's just a lot of effort to them. If they're a young rugby player, there's more intensity by them getting tackled on a rugby field, and there's more stress involved in playing a game of rugby than there is just doing a circuit training session. So we like re-engineer and readdress the relationship of that. Then there's some really cool things that they could do. I'd advise anyone, go and buy like a basic gymnastics book. Go and buy like a level 1 gymnastics book and learn how to do forward rolls, backward rolls. You know, if there's any parents listen to this, go and give your son a shovel and tell him to dig a hole and then fill it back up again in the back garden. It's going to be the best training he's done for a long time. You know, I remember like when I was younger, my dad would have us out in the garden, like working on stuff for him. So I need this pile of bricks moved, go move this pile of bricks. And then you just become strong through other means. And so in a roundabout way, that's kind of an answer for you there. It's, you know, not neglecting the basics, but enjoying and trusting the process.
You touched upon sort of weight resistance there and how it increases bone density. And obviously there's a lot of myths out there about young athletes, you know, using more than just their body weight. What's your recommendations, and what are like the cues that allow you to then tell your athletes, actually, you're ready to progress onto increasing your load by using additional weights?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. So it's a really good thing. So what we do is we within our tier system, that I have to give a massive shout out to Mark, who's actually runs the academy. It's a fantastic addition that we worked on together. So what we do is we look at a couple of things. We need to identify when someone's going to have their growth spurts, and we can predict that within a certain window of time. When the kid is going to grow a lot, or when the kid's going to put a lot of weight on, and then we adjust training around that. That's really important to understand. And then so I'll take you through what we do, how we develop the squat. So the entry level for a squat is that we've got some warm-up competencies that they need to achieve. So can they actually just orientate their body in space normally? Can they perform basic yoga poses that allow them to find these positions? Then they have to be able to do a 2-minute wall sit hold. So they have to sit on a wall 2 minutes. So it's supported squat position for 2 minutes. If they can't hold that, then they're not going to progress to the next level. Then they have to, from the 2-minute wall sit hold, then their entry criteria is to do a 1-minute squat hold. So just holding a squat position, hands across the shoulders for 1 minute. Then off the back of that, they then have to work up through every weight that we've got in the gym, every dumbbell weight for 1 minute before they can even put a bar on their back. So we take them from 2.5 kilos all the way up to a 50 kilo dumbbell. Then once they can hold a 50 kilo dumbbell in their hands, in their chest for a minute, then they can actually start doing repetitions. But when they start the repetitions, they have to start right back at 2.5 kilos again, because they've got to demonstrate technique, competency, consistency of technique, and capacity of technique as well. And if someone's listening to this, it's like you've got a 12-year-old that can hold 50 kilos in his hand for a minute. The dumbbell is as big as these kids' torsos, and yes, they can do it. And we've got 4 or 5 years of data that demonstrates this, and so from that, and that's how we gamify it, because we've got their workout cards. They know their entry level, they know their exit. They can't move up to the next level if they can't move through, and if they don't move through. So, and the coach has to see it, has to be checked off, it has to be logged in their program, and then we progress through so we'll do goblet squat reps. Then they'll do a squat to box. They're allowed to put a bar on their back. Then they do a squat to box, and then they have to get up to 20 reps for 1.4 times body weight, and that can take a year. And we're okay with that. And the interesting thing is the adjustments that we'll make based upon when they grow is if we know. So there's a really easy way to think of it. If we know that a kid is going to grow a lot or coming up to this growth spurt, we just take them down 2 or 3 levels. And whilst they complain that this is them going backwards, we say to them, well, if you're going to put 2 inches on over the next 6 months in height, which works out to 3 or 4% in growth, then we need to manage that percent in growth, because that's when they're very susceptible to injuries, like growth-related injuries, Osgood splatters, patellar tendinopathies. I suffered with loads of lower back pain when I was going through my growth spurts, and none of our kids get that, because we're responding to them biologically and their physiology, from what we know with the numbers, but then also we can interact with them and engage with them intellectually and emotionally by demonstrating this growth. And for them, it's a really good learning curve, because it's not a setback curve, it's a reorientation curve. And if anyone ever gets back up, gets into performance, and we've trained for you train for long distance races, and we've trained for rugby and sport ourselves, is that you can't operate at 100% all the time. It's about operating at your best version of 80%, and that's what yields the consistent results. So when they understand that, we take them through, and we've got, just in our weight room stuff, we've isolated 15 movement competencies that we look at, and the kids come through, and we have progressions for all of them. So that's how we really manage it. And intensity is always relative to effort. And just because you're trying something really hard doesn't make it intense. And when we go back to like sprinting as fast as humanly possible is really intense. Sprinting up a hill with a wheelbarrow is just lots of effort, because it doesn't cost you as much. So we tap into the effort side of things. The kids are sweaty, they're working really hard. There's loads of camaraderie in there, but then they're just working in effort. They're just working in effort, so it doesn't cost a lot, and they recover, and their parents are tired enough when they go home. So that's kind of like how we progress things through. I know I keep talking about what we do at the academy, but it's these real world stories and these things that I can, hopefully will help the people listening.
Yeah, I think it's important, one, for people to refer back to it, but it's easier for you to give those practical examples. So don't apologize for giving those examples. They're really useful. Another sort of big topic within the prep school world and the PE world is player burnout and overtraining. And certainly you'll have worked with pupils, athletes from similar schools. They, in a week, they're expected to have, our school, they have 3 games sessions a week, which are roughly an hour long, depending on their age. They'll also have a PE lesson. They're likely to have a swimming lesson. On a Wednesday, they're going to play a match. Then after school, once, twice, maybe 3 times, they'll be doing some types of exercise, either at school or at a sports club, gymnastics, hockey, football, rugby. A weekend comes around where they might have a Saturday fixture with the school. And then because they are keen and they are sporty, Sunday or Saturday afternoon, and then Sunday as well, they've got a football fixture for their club or a rugby fixture or a hockey fixture. And there's always a lot of talk about player burnout and, they're doing too much, especially when you then add in they've got a part in the play and they've got 3 nights a week rehearsing that. And then they're, in the orchestra and, lots of these children, across all the different schools will have lots of different responsibilities. And, I only see them from a sport point of view. What's your take on that? Overtraining, burnout, and responsibility to monitor that?
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting thing because we've seen this a couple of times with some of the kids that we've got, and also, it's all about stress management. And if we were to take the view that, like you said, it's where we've got organisations that are relatively siloed. Like you get this in professional sport a lot, where you've got the rugby coach wants to do this with them, the physio says they need to do this, the S&C says they need to do this, and then you've got the skills coach. So you're managing all these buckets and they all want equal amounts. And a lot of the time it falls on, and we look at it from fundamental physical development, there's nothing wrong with them doing all of that. There's nothing wrong with them doing all of that, but it's about understanding the cost of what that is. So we only realize the cost of it when it's too late. So the proactive planning and proactive thinking is what's really, really a necessity for this. So how I look at it is we break things down into 3 really simple categories. There's workouts. Now you can put your workout as like, put this orchestra class in, put the acting, put the PE. There's stress that takes a long time to recover from. There's stress that takes a short time to recover from, and then there's stress that actually recovers you. So, and then if you were to go into another layer, so we've got those 3 stresses, and then you've got are we influencing the creative side of the brain? Are we influencing the analytical side of the brain? Or are we influencing the enjoyment side of the brain? And if you can layer those 3, it becomes quite a complex Venn diagram type thing, this interaction. However, if we took the weak view, the problem becomes when all the stress is doing the same thing, is stressing the same thing. And from where I think, especially with these sorts of scenarios, it needs to go is that, if a kid's got an organizational football session for a big game, then he's got orchestra practice, and then to rehearse his lines, he's analytically going to be incredibly stressed. So it's how do we balance and complement these stresses on a given day? And obviously, not to mention, these kids have got to learn.
Yeah.
They've got to learn on top of all this. So how do we balance and create a flow of a week that allows the kids to maximize enjoyment, minimize cognitive load, and optimize education? And I think within that, where you would do a cricket, because you do it on terms and stuff, all the physical activities all stress the same system, because it could be all, where there's large groups, and I know from in a lot of schools, large groups, not the best amount of resources. You don't have 3 or 4 coaches that can take a class with you, sort of thing. You don't have the manpower, so we just play games, open field games of different variations, or and so all the time we're just stressing the same system. So then once that system's empty, then the body's got nowhere to go. But if we were smart and proactive about it, we could take a general, there's this construct called where you can do like an undulating periodization, which goes up and down throughout the week and through the cycles. But then you can also do what's called a vertically integrated. So you basically imagine like a stacked bar chart. Each weight, and that stack is your 100%. And through different periods of preparation, you will distribute the stress differently throughout that cycle. So if you were to take one, big block of it's going to be a traditional model would be a volume-based block, an intensity-based block, and then like a peaking block. That's what you'd have as like a classic thing. Whereas actually, in this, you would do 60% volume, 20-30% intensity, and then the rest would be like your peaking stuff, and you do it all at the same time. Now, if we were to be clever, and this is just a very loose idea, but if you were to be clever, how can we do this for schools? How can we look at and take this model and say, well, is our year 5 form S having a very cognitively stressed day? And you could really easily do it based on exams. You can program the year based around exams, and because you can't rob Peter to pay Paul, but are we looking at this as we're always staying up here all the time with everything that we're doing, because everyone has to achieve results, everyone has to get good grades. But what about if we said, all right, so when we come in fresh Monday morning is actually going to be a cognitive recharging day, a cognitive recharging bias, and they're still learning. We play on the side of enjoyment and rest and recuperation. If they have PE, if they're lucky to have PE Monday morning, then they spend time working through the fundamental movement patterns and yoga practices. And you don't have to call it yoga. Everyone does yoga, but I got 50 boisterous professional rugby players that have never done this before, meditating for 10 minutes every morning, every day, within a week. So for those guys to be able to do it, we can do it with these kids. And also you've got the leverage that we can kick you out and send you in the corridor if you want. But you can get them into this place where, we start ramping and manipulating the week. Like Tuesday could be like a really analytical morning. And if we get into that position, now I know in theory that's plausible. Reality is very different. We all know that. But I think that's you'd be really onto something if everyone got on the same hymn sheet and understood the global bucket of stress, because then I think you'd actually get better. Everyone would learn more. The neuroplasticity is so high, but it's only as high as the rope that we give it. And we say within training, there's something called it's basically a chart, and there's a line that comes across it, and then you've got at the bottom these two curves that meet in the middle. And what that's called is it's a parabolic relationship between freshness and fatigue. And optimal is just above freshness. So freshness at the bottom. So if you work out at 10, you're going to be fatigued to 10. Whereas all the time, we don't understand that if we're working out of 10 every day, that fatigue to 10 becomes a factor of 2, a factor of 4, a factor of 6. So by the time we get to Friday, there's no point even doing anything Saturday, because we've not recovered in time. You've got like this, what I always talk about it to my players. I use the analogy of a wave. What type of wave do you want to be? Do you want to be the wave that just rushes up to the shore, or the wave that's off Hawaii that people achieve world record surfing feats on? Do you want to be that sort of wave, or do you want to be the wave that's at the shore? Because the wave at the shore doesn't really do anything, but does it all the time. Whereas the big wave comes once in a blue moon that has taken so long to prepare to get there under the water. And it's recovering and recovering and recovering all the time before this big wave comes. So in terms of an idea of how I would manage student burnout, it's exactly how we manage elite athlete burnout, because the concepts and principles are the same. You just manipulate the reality that you're faced with. And that could be a really good initiative and a fun project to play around with. I don't know what your thoughts on that are.
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting debate with PE teachers, and every year in the summer, in fact it would have been a couple of weeks ago, we heads of sport from my area, we all meet up down in Brighton, at Brighton College. They host us very kindly, and this has been a sort of a hot topic for the last few
Yeah.
years. For me personally, my experience is that I think a lot of these children are conditioned. You know, you talk about your professional athletes, and their training program as a professional athlete doesn't just
Yeah.
start when they meet you. And these
Yeah.
children, their sports journey, their sports program doesn't just meet when they've seen me. You know, so
Yeah.
years and years and years, you know, being part of our school, other schools, you know, slowly preparing them for this kind of workload. I do think
Yeah.
that we as heads of sports, teachers, facilitators need to be aware, more aware, like you say, instead of working in silos, you know, me with my sport hat, music teacher, drama teacher, exam officer,
Yeah.
you know, we should probably be having more meetings and discussions and saying, right, I've got an athletics meet on this date.
Yeah.
There's a clash with the exams. So, you know, how are we
Yeah.
going to get around that, especially preparing
Yeah.
them for those weeks coming up, because the exams officer, well, they want revisions, sessions, they want, you know, every minute they can. Well, I want, you know,
Yeah.
hurdles practice and high
Yeah.
jump practice and da 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 da. Da. So I think you're totally right. There needs to be a little bit more autonomy from each school, almost. And then, you
Yeah.
know, currently with the whole COVID-19 thing, there's a lot of debate nationally about the structure of the year of sport.
Mm-hmm.
And I've said it again locally. You know, for me, playing netball in January and February is a little bit mad. You're
Yeah.
asking these girls to play a sport that the physical effort isn't the same as hockey, football, cricket.
Yeah.
Maybe cricket's a poor example, but you know, in netball, you're restricted to certain regions of the pitch.
Yeah.
In February, it's the wettest 2 months of the year. You know, so straight
Yeah.
away they're cold. A lot don't enjoy it. So, you know, could we restructure the sports year differently for those types of issues, as well as the issues that we just spoke about height, spikes, and other parts of the child's life. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Because
there's
it
lots
goes
of
back
debate.
two really simple things for me is there's things that complement each other and things that interfere with each other. You know, you wouldn't dress in a bright yellow shirt with, you know, hot pants, you know, sort of thing. Like there's there and I think you can get, because I struggled at school. I was dyslexic. I didn't get diagnosed till quite late. I found it very, very challenging. My attention span wasn't the best, and so, you know, I acted out as you would do. And but then I look at it from that point of view that maybe if because I was always, things were interfering with everything that I was doing. If we were engineering to complement on a global setting, then maybe we could. And you go back to like the wettest months of the year. My golden rule whenever I'm coaching guys, if it's raining, they never get on the ground. They just never get on the ground. If we need to do a little bit, like we need to do our work and get it in, you just never warm them up on the ground, and it always sets you in good stead. But I think, yeah, so that would be a big job to be able to pull everything together. But I reckon it would just because, you know, learning for me, like I didn't learn traditionally academically to pass it. You know, as I think some of it, there's a lot of pressure to pass exams and get exam grades, so then you can step through. But then also, your best learning is done like training. You learn with rest and you adapt with rest. And so that could, you know, are there days in which you can reshape? We disguise sessions as rest sessions, as recovery sessions. Are there ways that we can do this in the classroom? Are there ways that we can do this in PE? That, you know, you must see it sometimes when they come to you and the kids just look smoked. They just look really tired, and it's like, oh, okay, all right, cool. Well, remember that. Remember sleeping lions. I used to call that with my rugby players, like professional athletes. We played sleeping lions. Like, give me 10 minutes of sleeping lions, then come up. And instead of, we've had a real cognitive load, like they've done a real heavy sessions like a cup final week. And I actually did this for a cup final week. they meditated in the morning, and then I needed them to because there's lots of stress, create a game. I needed some agility based stuff out of them to do it. I was like, here you go, 5 cones, have a game. So we, instead of analytical, we've gone creative and enjoyment, and I've still got what I need. And we've de-stressed, and then they come out energized. So it's kind of, yeah, that's a huge project, like, but it could be amazing. Like, you could change the way education is done, like, and if someone's willing to risk it, if they want to defer maybe exam results for a year if they don't go well, then you could have some real good fun with it. But yeah, that's kind of, you know, my sort of idea.
Yeah, there's a lot of educational philosophies out there that would probably go hand in hand with everything you've just said. You know, the big thing is that it's traditional. Yeah. Exams are important to move on to that next stage, and it's certainly there's some brave sports people out there and sports clubs that I'm aware of who, you know, obviously from a sports point of view, it's all about results, and actually, you know, they're avoiding that pigeonholing of players in A, B, C teams, and they're saying, actually, let's just go and look at the more holistic approach and play with your friends. What enjoyment values are you getting out of it? What teamwork skills are you developing? All those more softer skills, rather than, well, we've gone 10 games undefeated.
Yeah, because there's too much attachment. They create too much attachment to everything. And you see it in the Southern Hemisphere, where I know lads that have in New Zealand, and I think we spoke to a few of them, that, you know, they've got All Blacks that come and rock up and play on the Saturday with them because they don't get picked for the Super Rugby teams, and like, they just have the best games. But then there's also that it is, from a coaching point of view, it's performance anxiety. Like you say, we win 10 games, so we've got to win 11. Well, no, you don't, because you've already won 10 games. If you think about winning 11, then you'll lose the 12th, you know, or that 11. And I actually had a really honest conversation with one of my players, and we were just flowing in a session. I was talking about this on a podcast the other day. And I think coaching and education go really, really in hand. It's the imparting of information for a desired result. And we were doing something, and I remember saying, like, in a session, what we're doing next. I was like, I said to him, I do not have a clue. I have no idea what we're doing, but this is going really well, so we're just going to keep going with it and see where the session took us. And then afterwards, he said, what was that about? And I said, you know what? Recently, the penny dropped to me, is that I become the best coach that I can be when I stop caring about coaching and start existing in the process of coaching. And you can have all these lists and check boxes, and everything can be good. But when you're operating in that level, and you may have even been this in your own coaching, when the best stuff happens, when you stop confining yourself with these restrictions of what you need to do, and then people learn, and people change, and they create. And from a school point of view, but I mean, I watched the School of Rock not that long ago. Those kids were the smartest guys ever after he was around. Do you know what I mean? Like, they achieved and they created, and I think that's, you know, you go back to me personally struggling at school and not getting the best results. Like, if my reward process was activated a lot more, like even when I was at school, Craig, right, there used to be classroom downstairs. There's 4 classrooms. The classroom downstairs, and this is so bad now thinking about it. Classroom downstairs, classroom upstairs. So if you were at the back, there was 3 rows per class. If you were at the back of the class upstairs, you were the best. There's a leaderboard. And if you messed up or misbehaved, you got relegated, right? I was at the bottom, front row. Right? I never hit the back of the room anywhere, because they were like, you've got to be closest to the teacher, so you're going to learn more. I didn't learn anything. I just learned that I wasn't good enough to be there. But now I've got a master's and I'm writing a book. So I need to call up my old English teacher and ask her to proofread it for me. But like, so my reward wasn't hit there, wasn't driven there. Where now, and with these players and the people that I work with, and I do a lot of like, where I coach is not just physical preparation. I just talk to them about what they want to do, and we talked about it before. What do you want to do? What do you want to achieve? We're constantly intersecting and interplaying the idea of what what the ultimate to them looks like, how that makes them feel, what we need to do daily to capture some of those feelings, whether it be, you know, the association between scoring a match-winning try can be the same as taking something off the top shelf for a woman in the supermarket. It's connecting feelings and sensations, and that's what coaching, learning, education is all a path of life as opposed to a tick box process.
Before I started recording, we were talking about a little bit about goal settings and how you do that with athletes. What's your experience of that? Why do you do it?
So within the goal setting, I actually did my undergrad dissertation on goal setting, and it's really conflicting because it marries up with different personality types, and it can be a gift and a curse to whoever you are. So what I talk about with my players is actually we're not in it for the goal itself. We're the acts of attaining and achieving that goal is the goal, and we don't talk about that until there's a few like triggers that they'll talk to me about, and they'll say, and I'll know that we're achieved, because if we give them a sort of external reward, then they'll go after that. But we change the way that we view our external reward based on the communication that we have, and what they do and how we do it. So in our industry, my industry, people hang their hat on like their biggest squat or the biggest bench, and what we're actually trying to do is engineer performance on the field. So a squat or a bench press is not very useful. It can be useful for 2 or 3 weeks, but then it's not important anymore. So it's like the process of specificity. So we will take that and we'll use that for the first 2 or 3 weeks that we need, because it focuses us to where we are on our journey. And then it will be like, I don't care about that anymore. We're looking for our next step. We're looking for our next step. And it's not even short, medium, long-term goals. It's, I like to call them evolutionary goals, because you can have a long-term goal, but have poor interaction with your short-term goal of that long-term goal. And I believe in that habit stacking and momentum effects of those goals. And so the way we just talked about it there, we're trying to draw always engineer success, and we never measure failure, because you measure that internally. It always costs you something, so we never draw too much attention to it. However, when we measure success, we measure the meaning of that success, not what that number does, and not what that grade does for you. Because you always get these, you've got like a narcissist. People have like incredibly narcissistic traits, and they've always got to be right, and an A+ is never good enough. So they can actually get what would be a incredibly good grade or incredibly good score, but it's never good enough for them. So they've actually punished themselves for doing well. And I have that with athletes. They'll run a fast time. It's like context, like, why are you unhappy about this? This is really good. So in terms of the way that we look at goal setting and go back, it's what sensation does that give to us? What does that sensation mean to us? Where else can we find that sensation in our life? Because it's not the attachment to what we do, it's the attachment and how it builds who we are. And I think that great people can do great things. And it's not in a way like, some of the world's best sportsmen and athletes can be the biggest pains. And like, you've seen the MJ stuff, he's a great example. He's an avid competitor on the field and a real nice guy off the field. But it seems that everyone's got frailties, but you can see his belief systems are always challenged and compromised with this documentary by socioeconomic things, hierarchies, and all these other small nuanced interplays that we just don't take into consideration when managing goals. So if I was going to nutshell it, I'd be saying a couple of things for people that want to implore goals. How does that achieving that goal make us feel? What does that goal allow us to do? And is it even worth measuring? You know, that's the question. Really, that's when it all comes down to. You know, we set a goal. Does it matter? No. All right, then don't set it. You really can say no. Then okay, it's all right. You know, I don't have to write stuff and measure stuff down. One of my old bosses, he said to me, it's like, well, I said I'm only measuring max velocity and acceleration times as my key metrics this year because they're the most important, because they're the closest thing to the game that I can influence. And he was like, well, what about your strength numbers? I was like, I don't really care. I know I can do that, but it doesn't really bother me. So we focus on some real key individual things that are actually going to have positive impact, create positive feeling, and build. You know, we want to build rock stars. You know, that's what we need. We need more creative rock stars. So
Powerful, powerful.
Yeah. I think it's right, man. I think it could be. You know, and obviously I come from someone who didn't learn in traditional academic ways, so. And I've managed to navigate the academic system in my own way. And you know, I was listening to someone talk about it the other day, and he said there are too many people going into law and finance, too many smart people going into law and finance because they've been detrained out of their creativity.
There's a whole nother podcast about creativity and, you know, how the educational system, you know, de-teaches creativity. And I know certainly my heads of art and music and drama, you know, they're all about that creativity side of things. And you know, my head of pre-prep, she's all about getting the kids playing music and how that affects their creativity, and, you know, keeping that aspect for them through their time with us. So
I do try and live that, and it's all about like activating different parts of your brain. And I'm a massive believer in this. So I've been trying to learn the guitar for ages, and so I reverse engineered it and I bought a ukulele. So I'm learning the ukulele, and you can learn some really cool songs on the ukulele. I'm not very good at it.
However, I remember when you started with the old guitar, because I started roughly at a similar time.
Yeah, and I just really struggled because it's very complex, and I'm left-handed, so I bought a right-handed guitar, classic, right? So, and I wasn't going to send it back.
Yeah, the salesman saw you coming.
Yeah, so funny enough, that salesman was Tyrone Sterry. Anyway, so I bought the ukulele, and I've had some like really demanding academic days of reading and bits and pieces, and then I'll go and sit and I'll play the ukulele and learn for like an hour, and then all of a sudden I'm completely relaxed, I'm completely chilled, and I just start coming up with different ideas. And it's like how they interplay together. And like you say, you get a young kid playing music, you could probably write a book, probably tell a story. And what's the film with Hilary Swank? Freedom Writers. So she creates gets these people to tell their stories and their pains of their life through a creative medium, and they actually become awesome. They become sound literature people. I don't know, whatever you'd call them, but they're poets sort of thing. But they actually have they take this whole creative process and then use that to fulfill the structured box. And I think that's really cool. And I think there should be, you know, let's get less of those lawyers, and although we need them, but use their intelligence to engineer some more of this creativity and bring back the Big Lebowski.
I've made a note of that film, Freedom Writers. Never watched it.
Yeah.
So I'll
it's good.
Try and hook that up
really
on
good.
Netflix or something like that.
It's really good.
I'm very aware of the time, and we've been going just over an hour. How are you for time?
I've probably got a little bit less. It's back to all the fun stuff of the business.
Right, give us 3 or 4 gems that the kids can take home maybe it's about their physical preparation, maybe about some of the fitness aspects, maybe about their mental well-being. I know
Yep.
you're quite big on that. Maybe something about
Yep.
nutrition. We haven't really talked about that, and I'm trying to get hooked up with somebody else to do a similar discussion with them. But
Yep.
3 or 4 key points that you would suggest to a young athlete that's important to develop them and push them forwards.
Yeah.
Give
So
them some take home.
the big one that I would say, we talked about at the beginning. The big time is where you are now. The big time is where you are now. And that's going to help mold you. And what I mean by that is that you're never better than your team. If you're the guy listening to it is the best guy on the team, you're never better than them, because you need them, and because you can't play on your own or perform on your own unless you're an individual athlete. But we talk about this from a rugby point of view. You're never better than anyone else, because you're just a part of it. So you make the big time your own, and bring people with you. Physical preparation, basics: 10 push-ups, 10 chin-ups. Can you do your sit-ups? Can you do a forward roll? Can you do a cartwheel? Then can you go for a 20-minute run? That's an interesting one. Can you run for 20 minutes? Can you skip? Can you jump? Basic things. Then from how to keep yourself busy at home. I wonder how many of your kids have had the fun experience of building a base or building a tree house. Go and ask your dads if you can go and build a tree house this weekend, and see what that does for you. Spend some time in the garden all day. That's healthy, good mindset type stuff that you could be doing. And the last one that in terms of nutrition, you really are what you eat. You are what you eat, and everything has a purpose. And I wouldn't say don't eat sweets, because everyone likes to eat sweets, but just don't eat too many of them. And really, really simple. Make good decisions. Make good decisions. If you want to be as powerful as a lion, you probably want to eat some meat. You probably want to eat some vegetables, and it's okay to eat some cake, but just not all of it.
Just not too much cake.
Yeah, that's it.
I know I'm certainly reverse engineering my diet and lack of activity for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And need to get back to how I was back in the day when we used to run around a field chasing people and jumping on them. Sam, we'll put your links up, but how can people get in contact with you directly, or where's the best place to find you?
Best place to find me, my website is coachsportland.co.uk. Email sam@coachsportland.co.uk, and Instagram @coach_sportland. And like I said to you, what I'll do is I'll get you on the email list about the free workout sessions that we're giving away to all of our academy kids, and we've made it out to a few different people, so they're more than welcome to just jump on Tuesday, Thursday, 12 o'clock, run by Coach Mark, and come in, join us, have some fun, and see what athletic training is all about.
Perfect. Sam, huge thanks.
Cool, man.
We need to make this a regular monthly, just a catch up, just to get my spiritual juices and physical juices flowing again.
Yeah, 100%, man.
Sam, thanks very much for your time. I know my pupils will get a lot out of this. Certainly some of the parents will. And I'm going to try and forward this on to some PE teachers as well, because there's a lot of good nuggets there for all of those people. So huge thanks for your time, Sam.
Cheers, Craig. Appreciate it.
Cheers, mate.